Hi, I'm Danielle, and in this video, I'm just going to be sharing my testimony. So it's going to include, I guess, how I got to know Jesus and develop a relationship with Him, but also a testimony and just kind of talking about the goodness of God in my life. So I didn't really plan anything, and I tried not to think about this too much so I wouldn't psych myself out. So I'm just going to try to start at the beginning. So the beginning, I was born, whatever, but I was born into a Christian family. So Jesus was always kind of a part of my life, and going to Sunday school and learning about God. And I remember just being like a really good student. So I wanted to do well in everything that I was doing. So if I was in church, whatever I was learning about, I would be the best, or in the class, or like try to be the best, know my memory verse, all that kind of stuff. And so I think I did love Jesus as a child, because that's just what you learn in Sunday school, and I never questioned my faith or anything like that. So I'm one of those people that I can't really remember details of things that happened like far in the past very well. So my childhood is all kind of a blur. But I remember giving my life to Christ officially when I was either 6 or 7, because I remember that was the class I was in, and they were talking about, John 3:16, and so whoever believes in God will not perish but will live forever when you give your life to Christ. So I remember going up, and so it was about age 6 or 7 that I gave my life to Christ. And so since then, I would know I was a Christian and things like that, but it's never something that I would really talk about or anything when I was in school, like elementary school. But being young, I don't know. It was just yeah, I go to church on Sundays. I have my whole church life, and this is my school life. I was never a bad kid or anything like that. I mean, relatively good most of the time. But I remember in middle school, I would never cuss or anything like that. And so if people asked me, then I guess my reason was just oh yeah, I'm Christian. So I just don't. So the next big thing that I can remember is going to this summer camp. Not a summer camp. It was a spring break camp retreat thing that I went with the youth group at my church. And so youth group at my church, I'm Nigerian, so I went to a Nigerian church restoration chapel. It's pretty big. If you're a Nigerian, you probably know about it. The youth group was never super strong. Once I got to the age of being in the youth church, which was when you're 13, it was never super strong because, when you're that age, a lot of kids just don't want to be there. It's their parents drug them there, and so people don't listen that much, and they're just there to socialize with their friends. But for spring break, they said that they wanted to go to this camp. And so I signed up to go, and it was amazing being there because it was just all these different, youth age children there, just worshiping God and really being enthusiastic. And I remember being there and thinking oh my gosh, everyone at this camp has to be super nice because we're all supposed to be Christians, so we're supposed to be super nice. But the biggest thing I can remember from that camp is at one point a lot of people went up to the front, by the altar, and we were praising God, and they were praying. I don't know if there was an altar call or something. I don't remember the details at all. But the main thing I do remember is just being there, and I think we were all supposed to think about something in our life or an issue that we were having. And so the main thing on my heart was my parents' relationship. And so just for a really long time, there's always been financial issues or something like that. And so I just remember my parents always arguing and always fighting, and I don't know why it affected me so much, but it just really affected me, especially because I just felt I always knew what was going on. Even if they were arguing at night or something like that, I would always wake up, and so I kind of just knew, and it always stuck with me. And so that was what I was thinking about. But the main thing that I was thinking was that this is something that is just something that has been going on for as long as I can remember, and it's nothing that God can fix. This is such a big issue, God can't even fix it. And I was also very self-conscious So I remember thinking like, oh, like maybe I should get on my knees. But I was like, oh no, people are gonna see me. And obviously in that moment, everyone's up at the altar, no one's looking at you. But that was just kind of my mindset at the time. Just thinking like, I can't get on my knees because people will look at me and all this stuff. And I don't even know what happened, but it was kind of just like God spoke to my heart and he was like, is anything too big for the Lord? Like, is any problem too great that the Lord can't fix it? And before I knew it, I was like on my knees and I was just crying because I just felt like everything else in that room was kind of just like disappeared, and all that was there was just God connecting like straight to me, straight to my heart. And it was like a really powerful moment for me. And I didn't know what was going to happen after that, but I just knew that God really met me right there and like spoke to my heart in a way I don't think had ever happened before. And at this point, I was probably in 8th grade or something like that. And so something that was recurring is that, you'd go to like a youth camp, or over the summer we would have like a convention for my church and you'd be like so on fire for God. And then you would come back and like the feelings would kind of just fade away after a while, and you just go back to living the way that you were living before. And so I went to high school. I was kind of the same as I was in middle school. I was a Christian. I knew I was a Christian and I did love God. And I would try to like redo daily devotionals or something like that. I think I did Our Daily Bread, the daily devotional, a lot. Side note. But anyways, so that was something that I always did, and I loved Jesus. But it was nothing that I was ever like super vocal about being a Christian. There was like a Christian organization at my school that was pretty small. And I never like went to a meeting or anything like that. I kind of just stuck to what I was doing. So one of the early memories is that I don't remember what was going on, but I was just like praying to God, just praying to God, and God loves you. But I really wanted to like understand more about the love of God. And I just remember like I was praying in my room and like God was like, I'm gonna show you, like, how do I explain this? He just allowed me to experience like just a portion of his love, because obviously the love of God is so great, it's so vast, and it's nothing that anyone could contain. And even that like small portion that he like allowed me to experience, I just felt like I was gonna explode. And I remember I was just crying so hard, and it was just like more than I could take. And everyone experiences the presence of God differently. So that was just like my reaction to it. But I just wanted to mention that because that was something that's significant that stuck with me, that I remembered. So things that are like significant, I will remember. All the other like small details, I don't really remember. So I remember my junior year of high school in particular was a year that was pretty difficult for me, because a lot of the things that I thought identified me and that defined me kind of started falling away. So I wasn't really doing theater that much. I don't know, other things were going on. And so I just remember like looking back, especially my first semester of my junior year of high school, it was so like, it was just really hard on me. And during that season, I had to kind of, start learning that God is who defines me, and that all the other additional things can never, match up to like his definition of who I am. My senior year of high school, I remember, is just being like an amazing year overall, in just that God did so many big things in my life. And I remember my senior year of high school, 2016, I believe, I kind of declared as like my year of joy. And so that's something that I started doing in 2016, I think. It's just like having a word, like really praying and seeking God about like what word that would define my year, what verse would define it. And so there's a lot of verses in the Bible about joy. I can't remember exactly which one I chose. Maybe the joy of the Lord is my strength or something like that. But I really just wanted joy, especially after the first semester of my junior year just being like so terrible. I was like, I just need the joy of the Lord in my life. All I remember is that joy was something that I was really seeking God after. And I think God really just like showed me what it meant to be like, to have joy in the Lord and have the joy of the Lord as your strength. So like through all the things that were going on, like whether it was my personal life or like in school, I would have to like tap back into that and be like, no, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I'm noting this because now, like being in college, and things will happen where people will do like honor bombs, which is where you just like talk about someone, or if people are like writing me a card about something, maybe it's my birthday or something like that, end of the semester. Something that I always notice is that people always say, you're so joyful and you always have so much joy. And I see that, and I just think I can only thank God, because I know that there was a season of my life where I was really seeking God for joy, and I was like, God, I need to have your joy in my life. So I feel like I'm skipping over so many like details, but I don't remember, so this is just great. So I think the first semester of my senior year, I was still seeking joy and things like that, but it was also a hard part of my life, because I use the word hard very like loosely. There's different like degrees of hard, and everyone's hard is different, but it was a challenging season of my life because I was getting ready to like prepare for college, and going into my senior year, I hadn't taken like any of my standardized tests. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I wanted to be. Like before, like half my life at least, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a pediatrician, I love kids, that's what I'm doing. And then by the time I was a senior, I was like, there's no way I'm going to medical school, like I'm not interested in that stuff anymore. But I didn't know what I wanted to major in, and I was like, I have so many interests. Like I've always been someone who kind of wanted to do everything. Like I had fine arts, doing like dance and theater, and like I always loved to sing. That was kind of my first passion. But then I was also like good in school, and good at like analytical things kind of. I wasn't like super big on math, but I was never like bad at it. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I kind of was like, maybe business, I don't know. Because I started developing like a passion for gender equality through women's education in sub-Saharan Africa during my senior year, because of a capstone project that I had in one of my classes. And so I learned a lot about social entrepreneurship, and so I kind of started getting interested in that. But my mom was like, there's no way you can be a business major. So and yeah, she really still thought I wanted to do medicine and that whole thing. So I remember like not knowing where I wanted to go, and like I would get invitations from schools to like go to their open house, and one of them, it was like Harvard, Yale, and like Chicago, and I think Columbia or something like that. And so I went, and I never like saw myself going to any of those schools, honestly. I was like, how like I'm smart, but this is a different kind of smart. But I don't know, after that I kind of just felt like Harvard stuck on my heart, and God, I don't know, I just, before I knew, I was like, this is where God wants me to go. And like I really thought he was confirming it in my life, like this is where I want you to go. And so it was really a test of my faith, just believing that that was actually where I could end up in the first place. So I just really had to learn to trust him, trust that his plans for me were good, and that where it says in the Bible that like, who is God that he should lie. During that period, I was really learning to trust God. So this was my first semester of my senior year, and it was so crazy because I was like, once I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Harvard, but then I start thinking like, well, I need to make sure like my SAT scores and my ACT scores are together, because I decided to take them all my first semester, which was just such a mistake. But anyways, so I remember like maybe this was the third time I was taking the SAT, and because it's like I can just try to get like an even better score. And like my score was okay, but I was like, I want to try to do better. And this was before I even took the ACT. And I just remember like being in the testing room. I got to one section, and I literally like my whole brain just like went blank, and I was like, what am I even doing here? Like I couldn't even like think, and I was just like thinking like, I came here because I wanted to like raise my scores on my own like power, because I didn't believe like God was big enough and like able to get me into Harvard if that was where he wanted me to go. I was kind of like, I gotta do this on my own, I gotta figure it out. And so I literally just like raised my hand, and I like left the test. Like I don't even know what happened, but I was kind of just like, yeah, I don't like, can I not take this anymore? And they were like, well, are you sick or something? And I was like, no, I need to leave. And so they like voided my score on the test that I hadn't finished taking. It was like really bizarre, but I don't know, I just remember leaving and I was just crying because I was like, you know, God, like, I just need to trust you through this. Long story short, it was just a great period of me learning to trust God. 2017 was really like a great year for me. My senior year, I look back on it thinking like it was probably one of the best years of high school for me because just so many opportunities and so many great things happened, and that was my year of joy because I was learning about joy at the end of 2016. So it comes time to, you know, like find out where I'm going to school, and I've made it into UT like earlier. I was kind of just like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. You know, I'm waiting for Harvard. That's what I'm waiting for. That's where I want to go. And like the day comes and I get this email and I'm just like, by that point, you know, I'd been like really trusting God and like waiting on God for Harvard, right? So at that point I was like very, I don't know if I was like confident, but I was just like, I'm ready. And you know, I told a few people and no one would really like, you know, react like the way they didn't react in any way I didn't think they were gonna react. Like, oh yeah, I totally, you know, believe you're gonna get in. It was just kind of just like, really? Like, are you sure? I remember opening the email and it was like, basically, you didn't get in. Plot twist, right? And I wasn't even sad when I first saw it. I was kind of just in disbelief. Like, I don't know. It was just like you started out with no faith at all, and then you get to the point where you're like able to completely have faith in God and trust him, and then it's like, you know, like I had all this faith and trust in God, and it's like, but God, I thought this is what you wanted. Like, I thought this is what you told me. Like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? And so during that period, it was very hard to just, I don't even know. It was like, just like the climax of what I thought was going to be the climax. And I was like, you know, God, like, this is it. Like, all of my life, like, this is what it's all been leading up to. And it was just like, and it's so funny because that night I was supposed to go to like this dinner with like an honors program that I got into at UT, and I didn't really think it was a big deal. It's kind of just like, whatever, like I'm not gonna go obviously because I'm gonna get into Harvard, and then, you know, my mom will believe me and everything will be great. After that, I don't know if it was like 2 weeks later or something, you know, I still loved God, but it was just weird. Everything was just weird, and I wasn't really understanding what was going on. It was kind of like, you know, trying to remember to like trust God no matter what. But it was really difficult, and that was supposed to be my year of joy, you know, so like having to learn, like actively choose joy. And I remember I was in church and I don't know what was happening, but I just remember God like saying, I didn't forget about you. And again, I was just crying. You know, there's a theme through this video, just always crying. But it was just like he spoke to my heart again and just reminded me like he didn't forget about me. Like, even though this whole situation is not like what I thought it was going to be, that his plan is good for my life and he knows what he's doing even when I don't know. And it was like kind of just the statement that was like, I don't know what you're doing, God, but I know that you're good. And just knowing that he like didn't forget about me when I was just like, you know, God, like what's going on. So skipping over, you know, the whole summer before I started college, I just remember like before my freshman year started, I was kind of praying just for like a community, because I would watch like, you know, a bunch of YouTube videos trying to prepare for college, and it was just like, you know, you need a strong Christian community to be able to, you know, just help you in your faith and to continue to grow. And I never really had a super strong community with my home church and just the youth there. I was super involved because that was just that's like the kind of person that I just am, but I didn't really have that. So that's something that I really wanted. I was really praying for it. So my freshman year starts, and it's the first like Christian organization that I go to an event for because I moved in early, and I meet someone there who later became my small group leader. We have like small groups, and that Sunday I went to church with them, and I was at that church, and I was like, I just felt like the presence of God there, and I just felt him being like, this is it. Like, I don't know, something that has kind of been a trend in my life is just like, God, like I just want one and done. Like I don't want to have to go try a bunch of things, because I really thought I was going to be like church hopping and like trying out different Christian organizations and things like that, because my school's really big. But it was kind of just like, this is it for me. Like I don't need to search, I don't need to do anything, like this is it. And it was right where God wanted me to be. And I totally knew that just going through that first semester of college and having such a strong community behind me of people that like became my really close friends. And in that period, I learned towards when was this? I think beginning of 2018, which I said was going to be my year of new things. And the verse for that, I do remember. It's Isaiah 41, verse 39 or 25. I can't remember, but it's the verse. It's like, see, I'm doing a new thing. I'm making a way in the wilderness, springs in the wasteland. At the beginning of the year, I learned what it meant to be vulnerable. And I've never like been someone that was vulnerable with other people. I was kind of always the kind of person that was like, I can totally talk to people about their problems, and like, I'm just a really, I can be a good supportive friend, but when it comes to me, it's just me and Jesus. Like, we can figure out my problems together. And with my small group leader, I really started opening up to her. It just happened, like it wasn't even intentional, but through that, just realizing there were a lot of like deep pains that I was keeping and like harboring, and I didn't realize it because I wouldn't really think about it. Things that were like causing me extreme like sadness. And so being able to just open up to her through that started revealing a lot of those areas that I really needed healing in. And I remember one of the biggest areas I think was my relationship with my father, because we were never like super close, or there was really no like emotional kind of what's the word, relationship, I don't know, but and like learning to just forgive him for any areas that I may have felt like he failed me as a father. And I remember I was going back home for, I think it was spring break, and I don't know, I just really like, I was learning that for God to heal these areas of your life, he has to expose them to begin with. And so I was learning to allow God to like expose those areas. And just like on the way back home, I was taking like a mega bus, and I don't know, I was just crying again. Oh my gosh, how many times have I said crying? Anyways, I was just crying because I just really felt like, I was gonna go home, and maybe some of these areas of my life that I was learning that I needed healing with were gonna be like dealt with, or something was gonna happen. I just felt like something was gonna happen. And I'm saying all this for a reason, so these details are kind of important. But I remember going home, and I don't know, one day of some spring break, I was like praying, and I don't know the details of what happened with this particular moment, but it was really significant to me because that was when God really healed all of the pain that I had inside of me, with just feeling like I was always alone in things that were going on in my life. And like, since I was a child, like when like things would be going wrong in my household, and always feeling like I was the only one awake, like hearing everything that was happening, always feeling alone. And in that moment, I know God completely healed me, and healed as in like, obviously there was no like physical wounds, but all the deep set like emotional wounds, because I was kneeling there and I just felt him pulling at my heart and just repeating over and over again to me like, you're never alone, you are not alone. Just kind of reminding me, like in those moments when I felt like so just, I don't know what other word to use but alone, and just like so sad, and just very, yeah. But he just kept reminding me that like, you were never alone. Like I was always there, like right there with you. And I'm never gonna leave you. And now I can look back and say like, he really healed me during those moments, because and I was thinking about this just the other day. It's like, sometimes when things will be going like wrong, or like something happens, people, and this is just like a human tendency to just kind of think about like everything else in your life that's like going wrong, or anything else that has brought you like sadness, just so you can continue to feel sad. And I'll look within myself, and there's nothing. Like I can't even think of any, like I just think of the person that I used to be, and like the sadness and everything like that, and I can't even find anything to pull on anymore. And so that's one of the ways that I know that he just completely like healed me, because there's a lot of details and things I skipped over, but just like fear, like living in fear, fear that kind of I just allow to live in my mind, fear of things that are not even reasonable. But over the course of my freshman year, he really healed me in a lot of these areas, and kind of like taught me the authority that I have in Christ. And so that's the best way I can explain that. So after all of that, going into the summer, I just remember this is last summer. I just remember that as being like a big season of my life of just like, I called it, I think, like sacrifice and surrender, just learning to surrender to God, like surrender my life and things like that. I just remember going into that summer being like, oh, I just really want to learn more about God. I was going to be a small group leader starting in the fall, so I was like, I need to like read more of my Bible and just really seek his face. And I wasn't like gonna have a lot of commitments last summer, but looking back on it now, it's so interesting because 2018, I was like, this is my year of new things. And so, all the things I thought I was going to do that summer didn't end up happening. I remember being like so upset at different points of it, but God really showed me, through that verse that I chose, see, I'm doing a new thing. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness. And he kind of was teaching me like, for him to make a way, you have to go through that wilderness. And so I think that was like really the defining moment of my last summer, was just learning that and just really being able to see his goodness and just like he's always been providing for me, but especially that summer, like not having a job or anything like that, and just like trusting him and learning to just like, this is what he's laid out for me to do, like this is what I'm gonna do. So then going into my second year of college, which I've just finished now, it was like really different because I was going to be a small group leader. And so knowing that, I get to be what my small group leader was for other girls, and just learning to care for other people more, if that makes any sense, and just loving them and like not learning selflessness. Not in that, I'm completely, like, I never think about myself or anything like that, but really through having other people, in my small group, I started learning about selflessness. It's still my year of new things, and God just completely blessed me, like, towards the beginning of the year backtrack. Back when I was like, yes, Harvard is for me. I was like, yes, I'm going to go to Harvard, and it's perfect because I told God, like, I don't want to graduate from college with any debt, and I know if I go to Harvard, like, they're probably going to give me a full ride. Because your girl, she needed money. So I was like, they're probably gonna give me a full ride and it's gonna be perfect. And so that didn't happen. And I got like financial aid at UT, but it wasn't like enough. So going back to the beginning of 2018, when I was still a freshman, there was this huge scholarship that I wanted, and it was like a full ride for the remaining 3 years. And I didn't like meet all the qualifications. It was the GPA. But I was, still going off from what I learned during my senior year of high school and just like trusting God. So I was like, God, like, I'm saying this in all seriousness. Like, I was like, I believe that you can do this. And, maybe you've like put this scholarship on my heart because I don't completely qualify for it. But, God qualifies me. So I was like, this is it. And I didn't get it. And it was very competitive. But, I was really trusting God and I didn't get it. But in that moment of not getting it, I just remember God reminding me of the verse that talks about do not worry. Like, I clothe the flowers in the field, and like the birds are never hungry. Like, I'm going to take care of you is basically the summation of what that verse is talking about. I think it's Matthew 6 verse like 34, something like that. I was just like, God's gonna provide for me, and he did that whole summer. And so I remember I applied for another scholarship that summer, that was like a pretty big scholarship, and I was kind of just like, God, like provide. So I kind of just was like, if it's for me, it'll be for me. And that was kind of the mindset that I had, and that I started And I still have that mindset now. Like, if it's for me, it's for me. I got an email that I got an interview at the beginning of my sophomore year. And it was then I was kind of like, oh, like maybe I should be more serious about this whole scholarship thing and like prepare for it. But I didn't prepare. I just remember like I would always like tell my friends like, oh yeah, I'm going for the scholarship interview, so if you could pray for me, that'd be great. And like I wasn't preparing, I wasn't thinking about it. There was like a list of 100 questions that they were like, maybe you want to look through these to prepare, but I didn't. And I remember like going for the interview, and I was kind of nervous, obviously, because you know you're interviewing in front of this like group of people or like their committee or whatever. And I remember when I was walking in, the main scholarship coordinator person kind of told me like, you know, if there's a question that you don't know the answer to, it's okay to say I don't know. And I was like, okay, like why would I say I don't know? Like, how hard could the question be? But I was there saying I don't know more than once. And I think that was mainly because there were like some history questions, and this is a long story that I can't explain, but there were some history questions in there and I did not know the answer to them. But what I did know the answer to, or what I could talk about like with myself and just like whatever, I answered those like as well as I could. And so I remember leaving and I was just so overwhelmed because I was like, either I screwed that up or like it was whatever. But I just knew it wasn't in my hands, and like there was no way I could control the outcome of it. Like it was just completely not in my hands anymore. Again, I was crying just because I was so overwhelmed, and I was just like, you know, God, like if this is for me, it's for me. And so I knew I was gonna find out if I got it that day. So the whole day I was like, I couldn't even focus on anything. Like I was just, my heart was beating. Long story short, they called me and they told me that I got it. And I just remember after finding that out, I was happy, but it was just like I was so overwhelmed by the goodness of God and knowing that He did that for me. Like I answered the questions to the best of my ability. Obviously, you know, like He gave me a lot of confidence going in there, but I know that there are other people I interviewed that didn't say I don't know to any answer. And I don't know. That's the only way I can explain it. Like obviously again, I was crying, but I was just so overwhelmed in knowing that God did this for me and that He's so good and that He did this for me so I could know like He did this. Like I couldn't have done this on my own, and in my own strength. And that scholarship program that has been like the biggest blessing and has put me in rooms that I never thought I would be in. That was like another big new thing that happened in the year of 2018. So end of 2018, it's really funny. It's probably like one of the worst periods of my life. Not probably, it was definitely, and it was just like a big time of just, I don't know if I would call it like spiritual warfare or just a lot of things were going on in my family, and I was like wrecked. But God was so faithful in those moments. And that was like when the song, This Is How I Fight My Battles came out. And it was like a literally perfect God sent song during that period because it was like, I don't have the strength to do this anymore. But my verse for that period was, your strength is made perfect in weakness. So that was like my saving grace, was just knowing that God was so good, was still good, and that He was holding me and keeping me strong through that whole period. By the end of the year, God really allowed me to just feel His peace going into 2019. He gave me so much peace that I didn't have before. I went to this conference with my Christian work through like, it was like for 3 days through New Year's, and it was really amazing just like being able to really experience God's peace through that. After that, I remember like I would just be like having my devotional time and I would be crying only because I thought about how I was feeling, and I could think back to how I had been feeling like the month prior. This is like, say, January. So beginning of January, I would just be crying, just thinking like where I was before and where I am now. And all I could do was just thank God because He completely just like restored me. And that goes into my word for 2019, which was restore. And the verse, it's in Joel, I can't remember. It was kind of just like, He will repay you for all the years that the locusts have eaten. And just thinking about it, and that He's restoring everything in my life. God was teaching me a lot about restoration like towards the end of 2018, but my main reason for choosing it was because of like family things. And so I was like, you know, God, restore my family, restore all the relationships, our family, restore all the broken places. But at the beginning of 2019, it was just so overwhelming just to think like, you know, yes, I want all of that, but God has already just completely restored me, like restored me emotionally, mentally and spiritually, and it was just so amazing. And then after that, kind of went through another hard period, and it wasn't even like, it's so weird because it didn't involve anything like external. It was kind of just internal. I don't think I've ever like been depressed before or anything like that, but definitely that period at the beginning of 2019, I don't know, like I can't even explain like what happened, but it was just like, why am I so sad? Like, why am I having these feelings? But again, like, God is so good, and he would teach me to just like go to him in these periods and just lean on him. When I know that that period kind of ended is when I was with my kind of like another kind of group like Bible study, and they like prayed over me, and my small group leader, my old small group leader, told me, she was like, you know, God is really stabilizing you right now. And since then, you know, like he's really just like stabilized me like emotionally, and just really been my strength. I think that's everything I want to share that I can think of off the top of my head. But the point of this video is kind of just like, I've been thinking about like, what's a small testimony to a big God? And that kind of came in my mind because I always hear about other people's testimonies, and it's always just like, not always, but you know, a lot of testimonies that are very popular, it's like, oh, like God pulled them out of like drug addiction, or you know, they were doing this and they were doing that, and you know, that was never really my story. And so when you hear those stories, it's kind of like, well, does that mean that I don't really have a testimony, or you know, that mine doesn't measure up because I wasn't doing this or that? And you know, everyone's story is their own, and that's why it's beautiful. And that's what, you know, I think God has really been teaching me, that there are no small testimonies. Like, yes, God is a big, huge God, but everything he does is still like amazing and is still noteworthy. Especially thinking about how he is the good shepherd and he left the 99 for the one. So he left, you know, the 99 for that one that maybe was caught in drug addiction. That's the only example I can think of right now. But he also left the 99 for that one like me, who was caught in their mind, who was dealing with emotional turmoil or whatever it was. He still left the 99 for that one that was me. And so that is just, I guess, the point of this, just to encourage you in whatever your testimony is. You know, your testimony never ends. It's still ongoing. Like, all that God has done, I'm celebrating that, but I know that I still have so much more life to live. Things are going to happen, but he's still going to be just as good as he was in those moments then. And so that, and through that, you can appreciate those hard seasons of life, because you know, they build your faith and they bring you to where you are today. I guess that is really the point of this video. I hope it encouraged you in some way, and thank you for watching, and I would love to hear your testimony as well.